We are going to start our discussion of file system navigation from the Linux CLI by introducing the concept of relative versus absolute path names. So I am logged in here in my home directory under user tux. If I do a quick ls, you can see different subfolders and stuff like that. So what we're going to talk about is how we can access a folder or a file anywhere on our file system. What are the naming conventions? So right now, I am located somewhere in the file system, right? My current working directory. So if I use the pw command, print working directory, it's telling me where I am on the file system. So the initial slash that you see on the leftmost part here is the root of the file system, the origin of the file system. There's only one origin of a file system in Linux and Unix. Okay, so this contrasts to, for example, if some of you are probably used to the Windows approach, which is based on drives. Okay, so you have the C colon drive, you have the D colon drive, Z, etc., whatever letter you use, okay? And that letter drive represents actually the origin of an entire file system. So everything that's on your hard drive partition, everything that's on your CD-ROM, whatever, on your USB drive. So each of those devices is actually mapped to an origin, to a root, as we would call it in Linux and Unix. And that root is specific to that device, that file system, that partition, etc. In Linux, it's not at all like that. We don't have letter drives. We don't have this concept of multiple origins for original points for different, device, etc. Everything falls under slash. So slash is always the root of everything that's accessible via a file system on your Linux machine. Okay. So, for example, in this case, it's telling me that inside of the slash, the root of the file system, there is a home folder. You can tell it's a folder because then it's followed by a slash and there's more behind it. And inside that folder, there's another folder named tux. And this is the folder I'm in right now. And when I do a ls and when I apply a command on my command line interface, it applies by default to the home, to the current working directory. Okay. If I wanted to see what's located inside of home, I could use the same notation, slash home. And I would say that, for example, in this system, this little virtual machine that I use just to play around, there is only one user, tux, so there is only one home directory that has been created under the slash home folder, and its name is tux. Okay, so I can use all of the options we already talked about, okay, obviously, for ls, and I just tell ls, okay, I want to apply ls with those options to that specific folder. Now, the way I say that specific folder, okay, I use the same notation that pwd gave me, so initial slash and then the name of a subfolder, okay? So this is called an absolute path. And the way to tell that you are using an absolute path name is that it starts with a slash. So if I do ls slash, I see everything that's under the root of my file system on this machine, okay? ls slash home, I see everything inside of home, and then ls slash home slash tux. Oops, I cannot type today. There we go. I get the same thing that if I just typed ls, because my current working directory is already slash home slash tux. So that's the first way to refer to things on your file system. And I've been using it so far only to refer to folder, but I could do ls-l examples.desktop, okay? So that's a file. And I could refer to it by saying slash home slash tux slash example, and I use tab here for auto-completion. There we go, and it's the same thing, right? So it's just different ways to name different things, things meaning folder or files on your file system. So there are two ways, two conventions for naming things, okay? I said the absolute path name, which is also referred to sometimes as a full path name, and I mentioned relative path names. So what is a relative path name? As you may guess, a relative path name is not going to start by slash. That's one way to identify this, okay? Starting by slash means this is an absolute path name. Okay, so it's not starting by slash, which means it doesn't refer to the origin, to the root of the file system. So what else could it refer to? Well, it could refer to where we are at currently. And we have been using that all along. For example, a few lines above, when I typed ls examples.desktop, that was clearly not a way to refer to that file using an absolute path name. So it was already a relative path name. Relative to what? Relative to my current working directory. So I am in /home/tux. I ask ls to list example.desktop. It's going to assume that I'm talking about the example.desktop located in /home/tux. So doing this or doing /home/tux/examples.desktop, exactly the same thing. Okay, two different names, two different ways to refer to the same thing, to the same file. One is providing the complete path, the other is providing a relative path relative to my current working directory. Okay, so that's the idea in a nutshell. And as we are introducing the concept of relative path, it's a good time and a good idea to also introduce two other things real quick. When we do a ls-a, which means list all the files, including the one that have a name starting with a dot that I would otherwise want to be, hidden, not seen by a regular ls, I get those two guys here, the dot and the dot special files that are present in every single folder on the system. Well, these are just used as part of the relative path notation. The meaning of dot is the current working directory. So the current directory in which dot appear, I should say, actually. So in this case, let's go back. I am located in /home/tux. If I do ls dot, enter, it's the same thing than doing ls. It's the same thing than doing ls/home/tux. Okay? Those three things refer to the same folder inside of my file system, which is a /home/tux folder, which happens to be my current working directory in this shell session. Okay? So I can use that dot like that. It's relatively, I would say useless, but I could do something a little bit more useful with it. I could use it to start a relative path. So when I write /, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to ask you to ls something. That something, you are going to find it by starting in the current working directory, dot, and then / going into, for example, I don't know, the downloads folder, and I use tab for auto completion. All right, so this is the same thing than if I did ls download, and I let the shell assume that, well, since I'm using a relative path, it's relative to my current working directory. Okay, so it's just a way to be more specific about saying the dot, the current working directory right here, right under my nose, and then that's pretty much it. I can use it also for example, with files. Okay, so it's anytime I could use a relative path, I can start that relative path with dot. And then what about dot? Oops, too much information here. ls-a will suffice. Okay, what about the dot special file here? Special folder, actually, I should say, sorry about that. Special folder that appears in every single folder as well. So we know that dot is a way to say the current folder where you are in, okay? So dot refers to the parent folder. So when we are here in /home/tux, we are inside the /home/tux folder. Who is the parent folder? /home. Okay, so this is a folder in which our current folder is located. So if I did ls --, I get this. And this happens to be the content of the /home folder. Okay, so again, it's another way to refer to the /home folder, starting with the folder in which we are currently, which is /home/tux. So ls/home/tux/dot is perfectly valid. It's an absolute path, okay, and it uses a dot location at some point to say, okay, I'm talking about start at the root of the file system, the subfolder home, the subfolder tux, and then go backward one step. So we ended up in /home again. Okay, so you can find dot and dot also in absolute file names. You just have to understand exactly what they mean to interpret it. In this case, that means /, so the root of the file system, subfolder home, subfolder tux, and then the subfolder in which I am, which happens to be tux as well, okay? So sometimes those notations seem like senseless, okay? But you have to be nonetheless capable to interpret them and figure out what folder this expression refer to, what folder this expression refer to. And of course, when you start your path name with dot, for example, okay? So dot downloads, for example, well, that's a relative path name, relative to dot, which is the current folder. And similarly, you could say, I want to ls dot dot, so that catapults me in the /home folder, /tux, which brings me back in the current folder where I am right now, /downloads. That's exactly the same thing, okay? So what do you need to take out of this video? We are talking here about a lot of things that are synonymous, okay? They express exactly the same thing. So for example, let me clear the screen. I am in /home/tux. I have a file named examples.desktop, okay? Let's just go over all the different way I can refer the ls command to that file. So I can say ls-l, and then I can say relative path, examples.desktop. I can say relative path in the current folder, example.desktop. Relative path, go to the previous parent folder, then go back to tux, which is my current folder, and ls example.desktop, okay? All of those are perfectly valid things. Then you can use absolute path, /home/tux /example.desktop. This is kind of the canonical, right, path. This is the full name leading you from anywhere on the file system to my file example.desktop inside the subfolder tux, inside the subfolder home, under the root of the file system. But I could also imagine doing things like that, you know, go backward one folder, so we're back into home, go backward again a folder, now we're back into /, and then /home again, /tux, and then /here, 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 /here. I could put like 50,000 of those, okay? So even if I give you a weird expression like that, this expression is really not useful. If anything, it's confusing, but it's a good little exercise to make sure that you are capable to interpret correctly, you know, what the system would do if somebody was kind of stretching that relative and absolute path name syntax to include those repeated uses of dot, 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 and so on and so forth. Last thing I'm going to cover in this video is a shortcut that we're going to use a lot, okay, so it's worth mentioning now. We've seen already the tilde, you know, however you pronounce it, symbol here, that little wavy minus sign of sort that is accessible generally on the top left key of your keyboard. Well, this has a special meaning in the shell, okay? It's kind of a shortcut notation. When you do ls tilde, what you mean is I want to refer to my home directory. So if I'm logged in as user tux, okay, that means that I'm referring to /home/tux. If I was logged in as a different user, let's say for example John, okay, so my home directory would most likely be in /home/John, and whenever I use that character here to say I want to refer to my home directory, it would be automatically substituted by the shell as meaning this guy is talking about /home/John. Okay, so you can use that again to construct path names. So for example, tilde/examples.desktop, I use a tab for auto-completion again. Yeah, that's going to refer to this thing. So you can see that the shell has substituted tilde and replaced it by actually the absolute path to my home directory. So it's kind of a shorthand notation here to avoid having to remember where your home directory is located at, just in case that home directory is located in a weird spot on the file system, or even just avoiding having to retype, you know, /home/ for example, workgroup 15 /project 23 /user tux, you know, because the structure of /home directory is going to be always trivial in the little VMs that we spin to work in this course, but it's not necessarily the case, right? So you use that shortcut notation to avoid typing a lot of stuff, but it boils down to pretty much expanding it. The shell expands it for you into the full path of that path name. Okay, So that's pretty much the starter kit here. This is the major concept that we need to get started when we talk about file system navigation from the Linux CLI. So that concept of absolute versus relative path name. And now we are going to use that concept and we are going to build upon it in the following videos.